Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Marcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting...
One time a guy handed me a picture of me and said, "Here's a picture of me when I was younger. Every picture is of you when you were younger. Here's a picture of me when I'm older. You son of a bitch. How'd you pull that off? Let me see that camera. What's it look like?" I got a roommate. I live in New York City. I got a roommate to save money. But see, I fucked up because I'm 31. I'm too old for a roommate. I fucked up severely. I signed a year lease too. I really fucked up. It's like I wrote a joke that didn't work, but now I have to tell it for a year. So see, my roommate said, he goes, "I need to shave and use the shower. Does anyone need to use the bathroom?" It's like some weird ass quiz where he reveals the answer first.
There are comedians, and then there are comedians, and then there are comedians, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Mitch Hedberg, in his all too brief stand-up career, pushed boundaries and made an indelible impression on the landscape of stand-up comedy. I'm very excited to be digging into his career today because he's not just any old stand-up comedian. He's a very special and unique performer. So to help me do it, I've got a co-host with me here today, someone you've heard on the podcast many wonderful times before, including most recently Clue, and before that, The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and many, many others. Welcome back to the podcast, Rich Baker.
Thanks as always for having me, Doug. It is such a fun time being on your show.
Man, I'm really glad you picked this. We've been kicking around the idea of doing this one for a while because I know he is really special to you. Yes. So I do want to dig into your nostalgic memories of Mitch Hedberg. But before we even get there, I thought it might be even worth taking a little bit of a step back and just talking about your relationship with stand-up comedy, because our audience may or may not know, both of us did improv for a long time. And improv is not stand-up comedy, which of course we spend the rest of our lives as improvisers having to explain to people.
Yeah.
Because someone goes, "Ooh, do your routine." And it's like, no, I don't have a routine. That's the point. It's improvised, hence the name. Right. It's, literally it's like, I'm doing this with a group of friends with zero script. Stand-up comedy is I'm doing this all by myself with a script I worked on and practiced a million times. Yes. So yeah, completely opposite art forms. But so tell me a little bit about your relationship to stand-up.
Yeah, I'd love to. When I was a kid, stand-up was not that prevalent on television, as you may remember. If you weren't actually going to the clubs, it was hard to see stand-up in the 80s. But HBO, I think, pioneered, as far as I understand it, the idea of the comedy special, where if a comedian has worked their material to the point where they just think it is whip crack, just sharp as it can be, then they give them an hour to just do their thing in front of a big audience, and they tape it and they use all the different camera angles stuff. And so I saw all those growing up. I was addicted. I probably saw them when I was way too young to be hearing some of that language, but I mean, I did. And, it was Paula Poundstone and George Carlin and, Jerry Seinfeld and Ellen DeGeneres and just all these people. And I absorbed it. I loved it. And I didn't understand as a kid that exactly what you said was that this was scripted material. The way that these people talked on stage felt to me like they were just being themselves in front of a crowd, just off the cuff, telling stories or whatever, and just killing. And I thought that was the coolest thing. Like, I liked music and acting, everything else, but to see someone just stand up there by themselves and just crush in front of a crowd with just words, that has always been obviously a big thing of mine, and I wound up doing stand-up a lot, and I took a break from it for a while, and I just got back into it right before the end of 2023. I did stand-up for the first time in 10 years, and now I've got another show coming up. It'll be this podcast will air after it happens, but the hope is that the plan is to start getting back up regularly and rekindling my performance muscles.
Man, that's awesome, because as much performing as I've done over the years, I've never had the balls to do stand-up. It always has terrified me because, like, at least with improv, I have the safety net of like I got my friends and I've got the mulligan with the audience that we're all just making this up anyway, right? So who cares? That gets you a lot of like free mileage in terms of what you get to do. You know, when you go to a stand-up show, there's obviously the audience is going to sit back and go like, okay, asshole, you've had time to work on this, so let's see it.
Yeah, I mean, they're going there
to.
they're going there for one purpose only, is make me laugh. You say you're going to make me laugh, do it.
Right. And while there's always like, you know, a good 5% of people that seem to think that heckling is part of the fun. And I have yet to see a comedian who says, yeah, I enjoy it when that happens. It's literally like, you know, if you're a surgeon, it's like, imagine you're trying to do surgery and someone comes up behind you every so often and like grabs you in the shoulders. And it's like, motherfucker, yes, I can avoid killing this person on the table, but don't make me have to do that. So all that stuff. Yeah. It's like, I mean, I learned how to deal with heckling a little bit during improv, but not the way that like a stand-up would, and certainly not the way like Mitch Hedberg does. And you can hear that in some of his specials.
What's that, my man? It's empty, dude. I got something to put in your pipe, though. You're all about refilling shit. Do you work at a gas station? Yeah, I'll take another one of these. What's your name, sir? What, Phil? Oh, I was gonna say Phil. That's perfect. Your name is Bill? What? No, you're lying now. You're full of shit. You're a plumber. Well, let me get to the question then. What do you do for a living? I guess we're doing this backwards. All right, what's the next answer?
Yeah. But like you said that like stand-up comedy was a little hard to access in the 80s, and it sort of is and it isn't, because like it was actually ascendant during the 80s in terms of like the amount of stand-up
if you were
happening.
An adult and could go out to a club, absolutely. It was everywhere.
I remember watching a lot of it on TV. There was this A&E the A&E channel would have Evening at the Improv on a lot, and VH1 would have a thing called Stand Up Spotlight. And this is the late 80s and early 90s, but just like you, like I grew up, like I remember there was may his name forever be salted the earth, Bill Cosby.
Yeah, as
but
himself.
Like he had that special. Like I watched that a million times because unfortunately, being good at stand-up comedy and not being a human garbage monster are not necessarily related. But it was a great stand-up special, nevertheless. I watched that. I watched George Carlin. I remember some older stuff like Buddy Hackett. I remember seeing, like, my dad had tapes of some of that stuff, much older, stand-up comedy. Yeah. And I, just like you, I was a student of this stuff. I absorbed it. I loved it. And I agree that like watching a stand-up kill, it's not that different from watching like Jimmy Page do an incredible guitar solo.
I totally agree. I think that comedy and music are so closely related as far as from the performer's point of view of what you have to do to succeed. And, just like, musicians write the music ahead of time, they know what they're going to play before they play it. Unlike them, right, the audience theoretically doesn't know what the comedian's about to say. And it's, it's living on the edge, and it's where the adrenaline is. It's the comedic equivalent, for me at least, of jumping out of an airplane. Like, oh, man, it's scary, but it's worth it.
Yeah, and I think, guys like you, I've met so many people, through improv over the years, and even just doing this podcast, that like people who are really into comedy, I think in their bones, like love to get under the hood of how jokes work. It's that understanding of like, oh, it's not, yeah, I watched a Mel Brooks movie and it made me laugh. It's like, well, no, it's having that deeper understanding of the mechanics of why it works. And then obviously you have to have that understanding to be able to do it yourself. And watching someone like Mitch Hedberg is really special, which is why I said, he's a comic. To really get what he's doing, he is operating at that kind of a level. He's not Andy Kaufman. That Andy Kaufman is doing the same thing in a different direction.
Yeah.
But the same idea of or Steve Barton would do this too. Like someone who I understood the base, comedy 101.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to start inverting shit in the way this works and take you for a ride to places that you normally can't get to.
Yeah. Yes. And I think if there's one thing I want people to take away from this podcast, is that Mitch Hedberg was not just some stoner who happened to sound funny. He was a constant craftsman who was, as personality wise, and he had good and bad and different things, but his work ethic, no one can say anything bad about it, because up until what we'll talk about later, when he really got into heroin, unfortunately, but before that, the man was just a constant writer, constant editor, and going up as much as he could. He honed his voice, he honed his jokes, his timing. He knew what he was doing. It was no accident that he would just happen to be this guy.
Yeah, that is a lot of the charm of it, right? Is that he appears to be this beatnik.
Yes.
He kind of, that is a persona that he hones, but also it is the only this is one of the things you need this ingredient to make these jokes work. Because on paper, they're kind of funny, they're heady. Some of them are sort of basically just glorified dad jokes. Yeah. But there's something about the way he delivers them in this persona and sets this mood that enables these jokes to be really funny in a way that nobody else could get away with this material.
My lucky number is 4 billion. That doesn't come real handy when you're gambling. Come on, 4 billion. Fuck, 7. Not even close. I need some more dice. 4 billion divided by 6, at least. Snake eyes now. I just said snake eyes. It's a gambling term. Oh, it's an animal term too. Popsicles are for the summertime. I like to play blackjack. I'm not addicted to gambling. I'm addicted to sitting in a semicircle.
100% agreed. I think the key to his success was his musicality mixed with his sincerity. He delivers these jokes so sincerely, he's just having a thought he wants to share with you. And there's something about that, that as good as Stephen Wright was, as good as Rodney Dangerfield was, and several other one-liner comedians, which is a huge craft in and of itself, I think Mitch Hedberg was able to do one-liners through a personality that was just the absolute, maximum combination of hilarious and engaging.
Yeah. Again, we'll get into sort of the details of some of this stuff, but the phrase "you had to be there" kind of comes to mind. It's this idea of he opens this window into this character that he is, and there is sincerity. It's not just a put on. He's not, Pee Wee Herman or something. He's not that much of a caricature, but there is this heightened persona that he lets you in, that, a lot of the joy of these jokes is just the joy of observing how this person's mind works differently from pretty much every other person you've met. So before we get too far into that, let's get back to the main event, which is, Rich, how did you get into Mitch Hedberg? Tell me about your nostalgic memories of him.
When I was in film school, I was on set. We were shooting some video, whatever, and I heard the sound guy talking to the boom guy, and they were cracking up. And I'm working camera, and I'm looking over, I'm like, what is so funny? And so in between takes, I ran over there, and I'm listening in, and the boom guy was an impressionist like you and I, and he was doing his impression of someone I'd never heard of at the moment, Mitch Hedberg, and he was doing some of the jokes from his first CD, Strategic Grill Locations. And they were cracking up, and even just hearing this guy's impression of Mitch Hedberg was making me laugh in very short increments between having to actually get the shot, move the camera and go to work. And I just remember, like, after the shoot being like, who was the guy you were talking about? And he goes, oh, it's Mitch Hedberg. Like, his CD's real hard to find, but man, if you can find it, it's hilarious. And he burned me a copy. And that's when I fell in love, like, right away.
Yeah, I mean, this will click with you instantly. It's very clear what he's doing, and you just have to kind of settle in for it. I assume once that happened, I mean, did you ever get a chance to see him before he passed, or?
Oh, yes. I was dating a girl in college who lived in Austin. We're in Fort Worth. That's about 3 hours away. And I found out he was coming to Austin the summer of 2003. And she lived there, and I was like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drive down. I'm going to take you to see this guy. Don't worry, you've never heard of him. It doesn't matter. And we're going to laugh our freaking faces off. And we went to, I don't even remember the name of the club, but we went there, and, it was your standard club lineup. You got a host, and then you got like a 5-minute guy, and then like a feature guy, and then eventually you get to your headliner who's supposed to do 45 minutes. Mitch takes the stage, and I think some of the comics that we performed were good, or I don't remember if any of them were terrible, but I don't remember like being like, oh God, that was awful, so it was probably fine. So we weren't like a cold crowd, but we certainly weren't ready for what was about to happen. And Mitch Hedberg hit the stage, and just like a Jimmy Page hitting a perfect guitar solo, his timing was such that he would make us laugh. As soon as we started to be done laughing, he would make us laugh again, and he would just kept cracking the whip to where my abs hurt. I couldn't breathe. I mean, the room was just the most energy I've ever felt in a room ever in my life. And at 45-minute mark, he kind of looks up at the back and goes, am I the last show tonight? And they're like, yeah. And he goes, great, I ain't stopping. And we cheered like crazy. And he went on for another like 25 minutes and just, again, never missed, not once. And I've never seen anything like it before or since. But I've heard from other people who've seen him at that stage in his career that he had gotten to that point. That was right before the heroin really started. But it was after he'd recorded 2 CDs and he was just on fire.
Yeah, it's crazy to think he packed so much into so short a career, because really he started coming to prominence in around, 97 or so, and he passed away in 2005.
Yeah.
He recorded only 3 albums, and one of them was released posthumously.
Yep.
So it's wild to think that he made such a mark in so short a time span. And for a guy who's like, I think a lot of comedians, since would cite as highly influential,
Absolutely.
Still one of a kind. Like, there are comedians who go out and do one-liners. I can think of places where you can see some influence of this, but no one's ever even come close to replicating it, and no one's ever really tried because you can't. This is, again, it's so unique to him and his talent that it defies something like that. You couldn't have a Mitch cover band of a comedian. It wouldn't work. Or someone trying to adopt that persona. It would ring false, because this thrives on the authenticity that he brings, and you can't fake that.
I was gonna have my teeth whitened, but then I said, fuck that, I'll just get a tan instead. I got some tartar control toothpaste. I still got tartar, but that shit's under control. If the tartar gets out of line, I'm like, come on, man, you know the deal. Fall in. You crazy ass tartar. I got so much tartar, I don't have to dip my fish sticks in shit. That's actually kind of gross, After that joke, I always clarify that I'm just joking. I don't know how much tartar I actually have. I believe it's the average amount. If we all did a tartar test right now, my name would be right in the fucking middle. I would like to go fishing and catch a fish stick. That would be convenient. I could easily get a job with Mrs. Paul's. They just put me in a boat with some empty boxes. And I will return them to the freezer section of your
Neighborhood grocery store.
Yes, and I have absolutely hosted mics back in the day where people would come up and then they do their set and they get done and I'd be like, Mitch Hedberg fan, huh? And they're like, yeah, how'd you know? And I was like, just a guess, man. This is like, they were trying to hit his voice. They were trying to write in his style, and it was cute. I remember at the time being like, and like now I'd be like, oh, that's great. That's part of your growth. You're mimicking until you try and find your own voice and that kind of thing. But a lot of people got into stand-up because of him. A lot of people modified the way they were doing stand-up because of Mitch. It's kind of insane. And I saw him a second time, but I'd love to tell that one later at the end of the of the podcast.
All right, well, we'll put a pin in that for later. I guess we should kind of get into like what this is like for people who have not heard Mitch Hedberg. And of course, I'll throw in clips here and there throughout the episode so people can hear some of this stuff, because us just sitting here going like, oh, remember that joke you did about the garden hose? That's pretty fucking funny. Here, I'll do it. Like, you would absolutely drain it of all joy doing that.
Yes.
So we won't be doing that. But I want to, as much as we can, because this stuff is sometimes hard to put into words, kind of articulate what he is doing under the hood that makes this so special. Because nothing makes comedy funny like explaining it, of course. But I do think there's some merit here to studying this and understanding why this is so unique. And that's not to denigrate, say, a Jerry Seinfeld who would do observational humor. Jerry Seinfeld is a legend for a reason. He's very, very good at what he does. And there's room for a million different comedic styles. But this is one of these like unicorns that only just comes around every once in a while, like an Andy Kaufman, who I think is probably, I would say Andy Kaufman and Steve Martin are the two comedians I would put up against him in terms of people who turn the format upside down and inside out to do something new. So if you like Andy Kaufman or Steve Martin, I think there's a lot to appreciate here.
Definitely from a game changer point of view. Absolutely. So just to kind of answer a little bit of your question, like one of the things he does, and he does many things, but one of them is he crafts jokes with as few words as possible. And usually a joke is a setup and a punchline. So at minimum, it's 2 sentences. But he has several jokes that are one sentence that manage to put a setup and a punchline in literally one, before one period. And I don't know if it's his shortest joke, but I couldn't find any other joke that I word counted just for myself. So I didn't this isn't official or anything. But the shortest joke I found of his is a severed foot is the ultimate stocking stuffer. It is 8 words long.
It's a lot like a Far Side comic in that way. Like Gary Larson would do this stuff where he could go back to our Far Side episode, but like you could put a simple visual thing. Some Far Side comics don't even have the caption at the bottom because he would lay something out there and then wait for you to catch up. And Mitch Hedberg does the same thing with his stand-up jokes. There are jokes, and I wish I had like a list of them in front of me to pull one from. I know you can do them all from memory, I'm sure.
I also have a list too.
Oh, good, because I don't. But like, he would do things that like, here's one that I remember that played with the form, which was where he said, sometimes I like to pinch the microphone cord up, and then I let it go, and then you guys get a lot of jokes at once.
A whole bunch of jokes come out at once.
Yeah, like something like that's a very Far Side kind of a joke as a stand-up joke where, it's silly, it's whimsical, it's playful. It isn't, he doesn't really do any storytelling. Most comedians, especially now, you go to see Patton Oswalt or someone like that. He'll just tell you weird shit that happened when he took a trip to the supermarket, and then he'll riff on that for a while and expand it and do things. But he's a storyteller. That's how his sets go, and I love him. I think he's a great stand-up comedian.
Absolutely.
This is a different species.
Yes. Yeah, and I very few, if any, comics who are alive today would not agree with me in at least saying that Mitch was a force of nature, that he was like different from, he stood out, like we all get that. Like no one's offended when they're like, no, I'm no Mitch Hedberg. Like nobody is offended about that. It's like saying, back in the day that like, hey, I'm no Elvis. It's like, of course, no one was Elvis but Elvis for a while.
Right. Yeah. That tells you something about how other comedians viewed what he was doing, because not every comedian can do this. And he's doing something that most comedians weren't doing in the late 90s and early 2000s, and certainly not now, which is telling just jokes, right?
Yeah.
These are like self-contained set up punchline jokes. They're devoid of context. They're not part of a narrative. At most there's a narrative that might extend over like 2 to 3 jokes, which is really just a way of like building to a bigger punchline. But basically, this reminds me of something like when you used to go see a stand-up comedian, and a guy like Buddy Hackett would come out and say like, a guy walks into a drugstore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just telling a joke. This didn't happen to me. I'm not trying to make it relatable. I'm just going to tell you something funny that happened. And I'm not making an observation about life. Like this is almost like a mathematical equation. It is a piece of comedy just floating in a void.
Yeah.
My fake plants died because I did not pretend to water them. I think animal crackers made people think that all animals taste the same. What does a giraffe taste like? A hippopotamus. I had them back to back. I'd hate to be a giraffe with a sore throat. God damn it anyway.
And he managed to get that style with this persona in a way that just hit like it never been hit before.
Well, the persona is really worth talking about, because the persona is it is a beatnik kind of persona. Like even that first album has like a stand-up bass just behind the entire album.
Yep.
Like it was, it has more in common, I think, with something like Lenny Bruce, for another, giant of stand-up comedy gone too soon. I think you can draw a lot of parallels between Mitch Hedberg and Lenny Bruce.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I remember hearing that second CD and being disappointed that the bass wasn't in it. I was like, oh, I just thought this was his thing, and it wasn't. It just kind of happened for the one CD. But, having only heard that one at the time, I was like, oh, this guy takes a bassist with him everywhere he goes. Like, how cool is that? No, that's not what happened.
No, it very much has the feel of like, I'm watching Allen Ginsberg in 1955 at some smoky club in Greenwich Village. Like that he's cultivating that on purpose, because it allows him to basically do this, groovy daddy-o, like take you into this weird headspace to do this stuff.
But the difference between like the names you just dropped who were like in that style is that the Beatniks, at least is what I know of them, is that they were very smart, right? And they didn't pretend otherwise. Whereas Mitch Hedberg is a smart guy, but like all his jokes come from this very naive, like almost like simpleton kind of place. Like he believes things that are, that are absurd and whatnot, but like he's so genuine with it that like you think he's just this nice idiot who thinks these things. He's not, but like it's so good you don't care.
Yeah, it's an incredible performance because of that. Like I said, you some of these jokes require you to follow him along this path, right? You have to go with him on this journey, which is partly believing that like, oh, he is an idiot, right? Yeah. For him to have some of these thoughts sound like, stoner thoughts, but to be like denigrating. And that's the genius in that, like, it sounds like that, it comes across like that, but you realize, when you actually are paying attention, no, he's an extremely quick wit to be able to think of this stuff. And the quickness is amazing because this obviously you don't have to be that quick to deliver something you've memorized, but watch him as you listen to these albums. Anytime there's a hiccup, right? There's a heckler, a joke lands with a thud. He expects to go well. There's a noise from somewhere and he has to then actually adapt on the fly. He crushes that stuff in a way that's like, oh no, he is absolutely the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's in charge of the flow. He knows what's going on here. Let me give you an example of kind of the joke we're talking about. I read last year that MTV's Real World got 40,000 applications. That's amazing, man. Such an even number.
Well, that's another thing about comedy, right? All of comedy works because of expectations upended, right?
Or met. That's the other
or,
way. Yeah.
Or sometimes met, yeah. But basically, yeah, they're all comedy derives from playing with your expectations. What I love about a joke like that is the turn he takes is so unexpected, right? That because a lot of these jokes are all about abstraction, and so normally like, okay, he's introducing this concept. We're talking about MTV's The Real World and how many applications they got. And you think he's going into something that's maybe a little bit of like, I don't know, a dig at the real world. Sure. Something like that's the most logical place to go, where you think that joke is going. Where it goes by saying, oh, such a round number. For him to say like the thing I find comically delightful is that this obviously, estimated number is in fact the accurate count.
Yeah.
Like, what an odd turn. Like, that's why he's a comedian's comedian, is because no one would expect you to make that the crux of the joke.
Right, because as you said, that could be the setup before his punchline to a totally different joke about the real world or something of that, or reality TV or whatever. And so where he lulls us into this false sense of we know where it's going, zoop. And then not only does he reverse it in like a hard left, but he does it and ends the joke so quickly that like people are laughing. Like it's one of those hit, beat, then laugh kind of things. And it's insane.
Well, kind of like the stocking stuffer joke you mentioned before. He will end a joke abruptly, and then he will wait for you to catch up. Like there's a lot of like, oh wait, that's the end of the joke. Oh wait, the whole joke must be present. I have to solve the puzzle for what the joke was. Hey, that's pretty clever. That step, and that happens in your head. Like you can hear it that couple of beats before the audience starts laughing. It's really impressive to be able to have the confidence in your writing to know that this will work. Like it feels like it's one of those things where like, it's like when you see those pictures of old flying machines before the Wright brothers plane, or like, it's like a biplane with like 10 wings and they all collapse on each other. Like you look at this and go like, this should not work. Like he must have, I mean, obviously it works because he tried it out in front of an audience 100 times to hone it. But like, even just like the base concept for him to know like, yes, this joke will hit. It will make people laugh in this structure the way I've set this up is incredible. Like, again, like if I was to get up and do stand-up, I know I would not have the ability to write jokes like that. I could never do this. It's so mathematical.
Well, and like you're a smart and funny guy. Like you probably could write 2 or 3 jokes like this, but to fill 45 minutes with these kind of like less than a minute long jokes, some of them less than 30-second long jokes. I mean, that is filling up a bucket with, like the tiniest like little thing. It's like, it's gonna take forever, but he had the patience to just keep crafting and crafting. And I just want to mention something that not a lot of people probably know about him, is that he was, I believe he's originally from Minnesota, but he did comedy there. He did comedy in Seattle. He did comedy in San Francisco. I believe he did it in Boston. I'm not talking about touring. Like everyone goes to those places when they tour. Like he would like move there and then do comedy in those scenes. And I've never heard it said this, but I'm guessing one of the reasons why is because he wanted to make sure that his material was working, like as I have no name in this town. I'm going to start from scratch and it's different people, different crowds. How do I make them laugh? Honing his voice in these different markets.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that when you say honing the voice, I mean, it is this comedic style, right? These tiny like jokelets that make up his act.
Yeah.
Plus the persona, putting that together part of it that really makes this sing. Because like you said, if I'm going to fill up a set that's say just a 15-minute, set that you would give to a starting out comedian, right? If I'm Patton Oswalt and I'm a storyteller, I can the like word to joke ratio is not the same as Mitch Hedberg, because if he's telling you all of these jokelets, it's just one punchline after the other, after the other, after the other. There's no long setup to a big payoff, right? None of those things. So the batting average on these little jokes has to be extremely high, because you're going to lose the audience if you can't keep up the pace of doing all of these little one-liners and making them work. You've got to be batting 1,000 to do this. And yes, he does what all comedians do, which is that he has a way of, like, if a joke bombs, he has a way of dealing with it. Sure. But he doesn't have to do it very often.
Yeah, I bought myself a parrot. The parrot talked, but it did not say I'm hungry, so it died. I get a cold sore, I hate to say it, Minnesota, but in a cold sore, I put Carmex on it, because Carmex is supposed to alleviate cold sores. I don't know if it does help, but it will make them shiny and more noticeable. It's like cold sore highlighter. Maybe they could come up with an arrow that heals cold sores. I fucking hate arrows, man. They try to tell me which direction to go. It's like, fuck you, I ain't going that way. Line with 2/3 of a triangle on the end. Imagine being killed by a bow and arrow. That would suck. An arrow killed you? They would never solve the crime. Look at that dead guy. Let's go that way.
No, and if his set wouldn't work if he did. Like, if he had to recover, joke after joke after joke, then these one-liners wouldn't be enough. And there's a clip you can find on YouTube of him from 1995, and his voice is very much like a 1.0 of what we know it from, his albums. And he even has a couple of jokes that are verbatim the same that he'll do later. But what's funny is almost all of his jokes involve him doing some kind of criminal activity. And I'm thinking, like, he started out with a criminal persona. Like, he was like, I'm the guy I'm the petty theft kind of guy, which is very interesting, because he's not at all that. Like, the only illegal things he really talks about doing is doing drugs. But he never talks about, like, stealing from people or hurting people or anything like that. And so it's very interesting to think about, like, how he had, okay, this persona's not working for me. How do I take the good stuff from it and then kind of do something different?
Yeah. And again, you're feeding it through this beatnik character that he's doing, that it facilitates this kind of, like, mind-opening experience for the audience. It's, as you said, it's sort of a way of making this material accessible. It feels like this is the right format. Like, if a person was to stand up and just tell these jokes straight, the way you and I are talking now, they would be, like, mildly interesting. But having it be through this persona, he sets such a mood that the mood is what enables you to kind of, like, you get in this groove with him as he is leading you, and then now each joke is an event, right? It's, I can't wait to hear what this is going to be.
Yeah.
So I mean, do you have any particular favorite jokes?
I have a top 10 list if you want to.
I did not make one. I did not have time to put that together, but I want to hear yours.
And it's like anything. I love so many of his jokes that there was plenty more jokes that I could have put in the top 10, but these are the ones that made it. So one of them is one of his super short jokes, 12 words long. I haven't slept for 10 days because that would be too long. That again, perfect, like, Hedberg construction, right? Again, playing with, like, just the numbers. Yeah. And I believe that joke then, like, transitions into a bunch of other jokes, like, sort of about that. He takes that concept and kind of plays around with it for a little while. He does that quite a bit, like, bunches them up by subject matter and stuff.
Yeah. I do like that one. I'm trying to think. There was another couple. I just listened to them all, like, back to back to back. So now it's hard to remember them because it is just, like, they're coming at you so fast. There's so many of them. But yeah, I do love that one. Okay, what's your number 9?
He sometimes wrote jokes about writing comedy, which I hadn't heard very much at that point. I don't think now it's kind of commonplace, but I remember this feeling like at least that it was new to me.
See, I write jokes for a living, man. You know, I sit at my hotel at night, I think of something that's funny, then I go get a pen and I write it down. Or if the pen's too far away, I have to convince myself that what I thought of ain't funny.
Yeah. I remember hearing that one earlier today. I think, again, he kind of gives off this persona that, like, I'm an idiot just sort of babbling up here. Mm-hmm. And so this, like, slacker vibe goes with that joke of, like, I'm not putting a lot of effort into this, or, that whole thing, which, again, obviously it's fake because writing this stuff takes immense effort and precision. But that's a perfect example of one of those jokes where he is using the slacker beatnik persona to sell, a very simple and funny concept of, I have to give up on a joke because I don't want to reach for the pen.
Yeah. And, he definitely, like, he'll call himself lazy a lot, and he might have actually believed he was, but I mean, he wasn't. Just even, like, you can't be lazy and do what he did. But as someone who always thinks that I'm never doing enough, I can see where, like, it wouldn't matter if he was writing 1,000 jokes a day. He'd be like, oh, I'm not doing enough. Like, that's how we're wired.
Yeah. Great choice. Okay, you're number 8.
I don't have a girlfriend. I just know a girl who would get really mad if she heard me say that.
I like that one.
Yeah.
He doesn't really do relationship humor. It's an interesting kind of thing for him to sort of mostly spend time on minutia, and not interpersonal things. He never talks about, he almost never even mentions his family, things like that. There was like one joke where he was joking about how, my dad I'd rub it in my dad's face. There was something about that, but not a serious discussion of, his dad or, things he did when he was a kid or anything like that. Like, none of this is real. It's amazing how authentic he feels without really revealing any personal information.
And, what's interesting is, we're talking about comedians in the 80s, like, most sitcoms starring comedians were based on the comedian's stand-up, right? And so stand-ups would tell stories about their families or their jobs or whatever, and so those characters would emerge. But Mitch Hedberg didn't really have characters because he wasn't telling jokes long enough to have characters. He might mention his dad or his sister or something like that, but I mean, you didn't know anything about him other than exactly what you need to know to tell the joke.
Right, and it was only for the purpose of this abstract comedy equation, not for the purpose of, again, like, being relatable. My dad, what a character he was, right? There's none of that. And what you're talking about is this, like, stand-up comedy to sitcom pipeline that was the early, I mean, basically that was, that's Seinfeld, that's Home Improvement, right? The Drew Carey Show.
Cosby
Ellen,
Show.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, you go down the list, yeah.
Right. That was like, okay, how do we take this persona and the motifs that these comedians tend to talk about and build it into a 22 minutes of television for 24 episodes a year. Mitch Hedberg would not work for that. I think he even had some kind of a deal to develop a sitcom that never came to fruition. I remember seeing something about that, but I couldn't even imagine what that would look like.
There's a story that he tells in an interview about he had a TV deal for a minute, and the guy was trying to pitch him on being a hockey coach. It's like, whatever you want, man. Like, it's like, I'm not a hockey coach. It's like, what are we doing here? Because as he said, they didn't know what to do with him. They were like, he's very funny, but we don't know how to make money off him being funny.
Yeah, I mean, you could make him a hockey coach. Why the hell not? I think I can't even conceive of what a show would look like for this. I think it would have to be something where he was just given free rein to just sort of be weird and say whatever he wanted. Maybe something like Seinfeld that was less plot heavy. Maybe. But still, I can't see how this would translate to normal sitcom format. So, so your number, is it number 8 or number 7?
We're on number 7. It's a little bit of a longer one.
I saw this lady on TV. She was born without arms. She was born with her hands attached to her shoulders, and that was sad. But then they said, Lola does not know the meaning of the word can't. And that, to me, was actually kind of worse in a way. You know, not only does she not have arms, but she doesn't understand simple contractions.
This is, again, like, you can see, like, how the sausage gets made here. Like, you look at just the last few jokes we talked about, right? This one is very similar to the 40,000 people at the Real World thing, right? The turn I'm taking is nowhere near the turn you expect, which is now it's a punctuation joke.
Yeah.
This really, this joke in particular sounds a lot to me like a Steve Martin joke. The way he would do some of his stand-up, and just like, I can't think of a specific Steve Martin joke as we sit here, but like that kind of, it's hard to call it anti-comedy. Anti-comedy is kind of a different animal, but it's close to anti-comedy.
Yeah. There's one Steve Martin joke where he talks about getting pussy and people do this, and he goes, I was talking about her cat. That cat was the best lay I've ever had. You know, and it was just like that kind of thing where it's like, oh, he doesn't mean this. Oh, he means this, you know, kind of focusing on a different part of the joke.
He would do that a lot. Yeah, you would kind of flip the thing and then flip it back to exactly where you thought it was, and he was great at that. All right, your number 6, Mitch Hedberg joke.
My manager's cool. He gets concerned. He says, Mitch, don't use liquor as a crutch. I can't use liquor as a crutch because a crutch helps me walk.
It's funny. I almost got ahead of him there, and I thought it was about to be like, well, the bottle is too small to be used as a crutch. You know, some version of that.
Yeah.
But I love this. There are a fair number of jokes like this too. These like substance abuse related jokes. There was another one. I was trying to remember. He was joking about pot, I think, and I can't remember what the.
He's got a lot.
Yeah.
He's got my FedEx dealer. My FedEx driver doesn't. He's a drug dealer and he doesn't know it. You know.
Yeah, definitely a few jokes here and there about the effects of drugs and alcohol that those increase in frequency, unfortunately, as his career went on. All right, number 5.
This might be the most quoted joke that I've heard from other comedians quoting it.
My friend asked me if I wanted a frozen banana. I said no, but I want a regular banana later. So, yeah.
What can you even say about a joke like that, right? I mean,
I don't know.
It's interesting that he obviously the math is okay. Things that are frozen I can eat later, right? That is what's going on under the hood of it. But it's not just that he thought of that. It is the delivery you just gave, right? So yeah.
So
here's some jazz to go with your joke.
Yeah, and I mean, he knew the little things, the little jazz notes that he could hit in a given moment. And was like, oh, I need you to laugh a little more here. Sweeten it. Ding.
And that's the stuff that really makes this sing, I think, because again, we can talk about these jokes, but that extra little bit of English he puts on it with that jazz persona takes these, what are actually very cerebral jokks and makes them like more of a comedy gut punch that it hits harder. Like this is why like something like The Far Side is more dry, because as great as it is, it's not being delivered to you this way. It's much more sedate. And this is almost like, what if I took that off the page and made it like, musical in some way?
What's funny is I'm a fan of The Far Side and Mitch Hedberg forever, and I never, until you said it, put them together. Like, he is absolutely the stand-up version of Far Side, like 100%.
Yeah, I think the more that I listen to him and the more that I read those two, it seems to me that they're vibrating on the same frequency, even though they're in completely different mediums.
Yeah.
So yeah. Number 4.
All right, number 4.
I wanted to buy a candle holder, but the store didn't have one.
So I got a cake.
This is very much, to me, the observational humorist coming through this side of him, which is, literally like I see a cake and I recognize that it also serves this function as holding candles, right? I see one object as a separate, different object and can put that into there's a lot of Mitch Hedberg jokes that do things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 3, this one's, again, slightly longer, but not much.
I was walking by a dry cleaner at 3 a.m. and the sign said, "Sorry, we're closed." You don't have to be sorry. It's 3 a.m. and you're a dry cleaner. It would be ridiculous for me to expect you to be open. I'm not going to walk in at 10 and say, "Hey, man, I walked by at 3. You guys were closed. Somebody owes me an apology." I've been working. Hey, that's right. You guys did that.
I like this as well. And this is a similar thing too, where it's the observation of like the little things in our world, right? The sign that always says sorry, or the apologetic tone of that sign.
Yeah.
Right. And he'll what's interesting is the way his mind works, because we all pass by this stuff every day a million times. And it's the rare mind that will notice that and then extrapolate. What can I make out of this? Like, I think it would be interesting because I don't feel like I go through life as much as I like to comment on shit and crack jokes. I don't think I would walk through a mall and every object I see, my brain would be doing this kind of, extrapolation from what things I see.
Yeah.
I feel like he could walk into a mall with with a notepad and come out with an entire act just by noticing all this little shit.
Probably. Like, he was that kind of guy. Like, I mean, he would throw away 90% of it no matter how much he wrote, but he was constantly writing.
Well, that's true of most comedians. I think they'll tell you, 90% of what you write is garbage, which is why you have to write so much to get that, perfect 10%.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
By the way, I just want to say, if anyone's listening to this podcast who's never heard Mitch Hedberg, please listen to him. And like, I'm doing these jokes in front of just Doug. There's no audience. I'm doing like a little Hedberg impersonation. Like, I am not doing them the justice that he could do them.
You do a pretty good Hedberg impression though when you put your all into it. I think you've got a good one.
Thanks, man. All right, I'll give it my all on this one. Number 2, I'm a mumbler. If I'm walking with a friend and I say something, he won't hear me. He'll say, "What?" So I'll say again, but once again, he doesn't hear me. So he says, "What?" But really, it's just some insignificant shit that I'm saying. So, but now I'm yelling, "That tree is far away."
I've had this interchange with my wife more times than I can count. Some version of, of like, what I said something, it was minor, it got missed. And then it's like, "What did you say?" I'm like, "Do I need to repeat this? It was so minor." And then, "Why aren't you repeating it?" Now it becomes bigger and bigger until you're like, "Yeah, I literally said nothing," which is why I said something like "never mind" in the first place.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that relatability helps, because even if you don't see the world like Mitch, you can see how he sees the world.
That's the key, right? Is that like your mind doesn't have to work this way, but he leaves you all of the breadcrumbs you need to follow him through these jokes. And that's, I think, the delight. Again, you feel like when you're exploring these jokes, you are exploring the inner workings of a mind that's very different from your own. And that's a lot of the delight, I think, of just going like, "Oh man, I wish my brain worked this way. I wish I could make the connections that he makes." So with that, tell me your number 1.
It's one of his shorter jokes. It's 13 words long. And I just like to preface it by saying it is also tragic, because while it is one of his funniest jokes, it is also the reason why we don't know what else he could have given us.
I used to do drugs. I still do, but I used to too.
I used to do drugs. I still do, but I used to too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it was funny when he was alive, but like now it's just like, and it's not to end on a downer here, but just like I saw him a second time in the fall of 2004, and he was touring with Stephen Lynch. He's a singing comedian who I had never heard of at the time. And but I bought the ticket to see Mitch Hedberg, and I figure if this guy's any good, bonus, whatever. Mitch goes on first, and I'm thinking, man, this guy Stephen Lynch has some balls if he's going to follow Mitch Hedberg. No, it was the absolute right call, because Mitch was not having a great day. And at one point, like, he had notes all over, and he couldn't remember what jokes he did and didn't do. He was clearly drunk. He was clearly on stuff. At one point, he laid down on the stage on his back, like, not part of a bit, just he's like, I can't really walk right now, so I'm just going to lay down. And he was doing jokes from lay down position, which was kind of cute, except it was so obvious that this wasn't like a challenge. It was like, this was just what circumstances were dictating. And I remember just being so disappointed and having no idea why he was doing this. Stephen Lynch killed, so it saved the night, which was great. But then cut to a few months later, I met a man named Eddie Brill, who, if you've never heard of him, he worked as Letterman's stand-up warm-up guy for years, and he would also help book the comedians, different things. And I remember meeting him at a workshop, and I said, hey, man, I know you're friends with Mitch Hedberg. Like, is he okay? Like, I saw him a few months ago. He's terrible. And he was just like, no, he's not okay. And that was a month before Mitch Hedberg died of a heroin overdose. So,
yeah. There's so many. I mean, it's just a story that got repeated over and over again, both in music and in other mediums. But like, you can see the parallels between Mitch Hedberg and like Jim Morrison, right? Or
absolutely.
Any of the, basically,
Kurt Cobain.
Half of those guys that died. Yeah, Kurt Cobain. Everyone who died at the end of the '60s and early '70s.
Yep. Hendrix and all of them. Yeah.
And I think it gives way to this narrative that like, tortured genius, he can't handle the world, so he needs drugs and dies. And like that pattern gets repeated, but I don't feel like that is in fact true, because I've met more than my share of geniuses, both artistic geniuses and people who are geniuses at other things. And no, they don't all die of heroin overdoses. There is something else. It's not this idea that like, yes, they burn, they have to die young because they burn so bright. Like that's a fiction.
Yeah, it's bullshit. Absolutely.
No, he died of heroin because he obviously he needed help and wasn't able to get it for whatever reason or another.
I mean, I'm going to disagree with you just because of what I've heard other comedians say, is because as much as I love and respect Mitch Hedberg, he made the choice. Like, he got into heroin and all his friends were like, dude, maybe you should slow down on this. And he would tell them, I'm making a choice. I'm barreling into this. I'm doing more of this. Like, he was not like, I'm trying to quit. Or at least I've never heard of anyone say that. I heard that he was not trying to quit, that he was full steam ahead.
Oh, no, I believe he was. I just mean that, I'm sure somewhere there was an opportunity, or at least you would think that it happens because, yeah, he's doing that to himself, but is there someone else who can intervene? Is there some path, some place where the fork in the road does not lead to him dying of heroin? And I have to believe that
I hope
there is. You hope so, but I mean, it does sort of increase his legend. That's not to make it into a good thing, but like there is something to that this is all we got of him, basically, or these 3 albums and whatever clips you can scrounge up of him, on Letterman or wherever else.
Yeah.
And but what a mark he left in that short time.
That's the way I want to end this podcast is like, yes, he had a short career. He never got his full HBO special. He had a half-hour comedy special and a number of TV appearances, 3 albums, and a number of tours, and not much else. He made a movie that's unwatchably bad. Don't go watch it. It's called Los Enchiladas. Don't. It's terrible. It's definitely someone learning how to be a filmmaker, and they're not there yet. But despite all that, I will still quote him to people who I know his work. If I hear about someone who likes comedy who hasn't heard of Mitch Hedberg, I'll like send them a YouTube clip or something, because I'm like, I honestly think if you like comedy, you should listen to him, because he's probably going to make you laugh, because he figured out how to make everyone laugh.
I've yet to see a person, listen to a Mitch Hedberg thing and not be at least impressed, even if it's not their cup of tea.
Yeah.
At least not come away with the idea of like, this guy is doing shit that is on another level.
Yeah.
Whether it connects with you or not, that's subjective, but like you can't ignore what a genius he was. And when someone like this comes along in a medium, whether it's a film director or a musician or a singer or just a luminary, someone who is tapped into something that the rest of us mortals wish we could tap into, you want to be along for that ride. You want to get a chance to experience the world from a perspective that is truly new. And Mitch Hedberg gave us that.
Yeah. Yeah. And thanks to the recordings on YouTube and wherever you get your audio or whatever, like, we'll always have that contribution, and it will probably be relevant for quite some time.
Is there anyone who you've seen lately as a stand-up comedian who you think, obviously isn't doing what Mitch did, but embodies something about his spirit, or, having this kind of maybe a different take on things?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good comics out there who are doing, different stuff and experimental stuff, which I love how much is happening in the world of comedy. And, the audience is so splintered now that you can really do your own thing. There's a Finnish comedian named Ismo, one name, Izmo, and he has some very hilarious observations of like what it's like to be a Finnish man in the United States. And he builds on this absurdity in a sincere way. Different voice than Hedberg, but I can see how I assume he was probably inspired by Hedberg. Not in any way of like infringement, but in just like oh man, he probably helped you find this voice.
Yeah, the one I would cite as a comedian I've been into for a while, someone I found he was on one of these like stand-up competition shows, like that's where he first got his start. I forget what it was called. Last Comic Standing. That's what it was called. He was on Last Comic Standing. Gary Gulman, who
he's great.
Yeah, he does a lot with observation. That is, again, not always. He does some very personal stuff, and he is a storyteller, but he also does this highly abstracted shit, kind of like what Mitch Hedberg would do, maybe in a longer format. But he does that, and again, a lot of it depends on his unique cadence. He's extraordinarily precise with the way he delivers, like, word by word. So I feel like that has a little bit of Mitch's spirit in it, the way he does that. So I would recommend people go seek that out. In fact, I think he just has a new special on HBO very recently, which is great. So yeah, I would.
He's had a
out.
few that are worth checking out. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's wonderful. And if you don't know who he is, you have seen him if you saw Joker, because he is the comedian working the club when Joaquin Phoenix goes to watch a comedian. That's the comedian he's watching. That's Gary Gulman.
I've never seen the movie. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's the feel-good movie of the year.
I'll shout out one more quick comedian. Her name is Tina Frimmel, I think it's how it's pronounced, Friml.
You sounded like you were about to say like this Tina Fey. Have you ever heard of her? This up-and-comer?
She's this up-and-comer. But Tina Frimmel, she has cerebral palsy, and she part of like her literal speaking voice is different cadence than most of us. So she just leans into it, and she uses her voice in the most funny way, in a commanding way, in a very like smart kind of way. And I don't know if she was influenced by Mitch Hedberg or not. She's kind of young, but definitely like when I watch her, I think of Mitch.
That reminds me of there's another comedian. I think his name is Josh Blue, who also has cerebral palsy.
Yeah,
and
he's
similar thing where he is a great comedian, and he can't help his condition. And so what you do as a good comedian or performer is, this is the authentic me,
yes.
Right? Because the thing that worked about Mitch is that he somehow managed to be both this heightened, weird abstract character and incredibly authentic at the same time. If you're not authentic as a comedian, the audience will immediately smell that and you're done. Like you have to have, the audience has to like believe in what you're saying. And that is hard to fake. So you have to just be yourself, and the audience will like you a whole lot more. So,
1,000,000%.
Yeah. Rich, we're coming here to the end. So, we've sort of talked about it a lot, but what is it you think about Mitch Hedberg's work that, endures? Because I think he's up there on the Mount Rushmore with, Richard Pryor and George Carlin and, Robin Williams, like these like stand-up comedians where you just go like, this guy did something unique and special that will be celebrated forever.
I have a list of songs that I need to put on if I feel like I gotta cry. So I'll just put on certain songs and like it will make me cry. And then I have a list of YouTube videos that I'm like, I need to laugh. And there's some Monty Python on there, and there's some movie scenes and some different things. But Mitch Hedberg is on there more than anything else, because even though I've heard these jokes hundreds of times at this point, I will still laugh every time I listen to them. And it just, he created material. He created, these recordings that will always put me in a good mood every time.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the innovation. Because, you and I have both spent a lot of time performing. And when you do that, when you're the kind of person that we are, we watch all the comedy we can get our hands on. You dissect it. You tend to see the code in the Matrix as you watch it, which allows you can still appreciate it, but it does, there is a little bit of like, I wish I didn't know how all of the magic trick was done. With something like this, even when you understand, the mathematics going on under each joke, which we've talked about tonight, it was just a handful of them. It never stops being impressive.
Yeah.
And you watch this and just go like, nobody could put jokes together the way he did and deliver them the way he did. It is such a unique vision and point of view. It's almost like, compared to yet another luminary, Picasso. Right. Sure. When you look at a Picasso painting, it is like, that is a Picasso painting. Nobody else could see the world in this weird cubist way that Pablo Picasso did. And that's why his art is going to be, remembered for centuries.
Yes.
And this is the stand-up equivalent of something like that. Mitch Hedberg's view of planet Earth is unique to him and will stand the test of time, I think, because no one can do what he did the way he did. It is, that special.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, great pick. I'm really glad we spent the time to do this one today. And now that I know you're a Monty Python fan, I'm going to file that away because we got to do an episode on Monty Python, you and I, at some point. All right. Rich, what do you got to plug, man? Tell people where they can find you.
Well, we've been talking about stand-up this whole time. So I coach stand-ups one-on-one, private coaching, and I also teach improv classes, and I coach improv troops and all that kind of stuff. So you can find me at Rich Baker Coaching on Instagram or www.richbakercoaching.com.
And if you like this podcast, please spend the time to go wherever you found it and drop it a review. That is very helpful for raising the podcast visibility. Doesn't take long, and I know there's people out there listening, so do it because I command it. No, please do it. It is very helpful. So do that. Also, so if you want to drop us a line, there's a link to all of our social media portals in the show notes, but we're on X, Threads, BlueSky, and Instagram, and also I'm on TikTok doing bullshit impressions, but you can go there and see that. Not really related to the show, but fuck it, it's fun. So I'll put my bonus reels up there too. So yeah, the bonus reels are on TikTok and Instagram. So if you have thoughts on our recent spate of episodes, which was going back in time, Matchbox 20, Independence Day, and Ghostbusters, please do that. Coming up real soon. Assuming all goes according to plan, we'll record that Crash Bandicoot episode we weren't able to do last month because just shit happens. We're also planning on recording an episode, kind of follow-up to our favorite Disney songs episode. We're going to do like a sequel to that episode about all of the songs. The first batch was all about songs from the 61 animated classic films. This is our favorite songs from every Disney thing outside of that list of films. So the theme parks, stuff from the Disney Channel, live action movies, right? If you're wondering, like, why didn't they put a Mary Poppins song in there? That's why. It may show up now. So we're going to do that. And I believe we've also got one in the works on Spaceballs. So lots of fun stuff coming down the pipeline. So keep an eye out for that stuff. And yeah, that'll do it for this episode. Rich, thanks again for stopping by, as always.
Thanks so much for having me, as always.
All right. And so until next time, that is one more entry in the Nostalgium Arcanum.
Hey, you know what keeps me from acting? Fucking auditions. But I got to be in a movie. I had a small scene in the movie. But I got to act with Peter Frampton. He was in the movie. And we had to smoke pot for our scene. But it was fake pot. Do not buy pot on a movie set. But I got to smoke fake pot with Peter Frampton. That's a cool story. It's as cool as smoking real pot with a guy who looks like Peter Frampton. I've done that way more. Now, Peter Frampton's a musical legend, but I don't know his music. So when you meet a legend and you don't know his body of work, you have to divert from that fact. Hey, Peter Frampton, do you like toast too? Yes, as do I. It's warm and crispy. And a perfect place for jelly to lay. Now stay away from me, Frampton. I ain't got shit to say to you. You know, I'm sick of following my dreams, man. I'm just gonna ask where they're going and hook up with them later. That's right. That's right. Get some applause on that CD. Thanks a lot. Have a good night, all right? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the laughs, man.